Hello and welcome to Esoteriliana. Today we're going to be talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And when I talk about the divine masculine and the divine feminine, I'm referring to energies because everything is made up of energy. And the divine feminine and masculine can manifest physically in the opposite sex or in someone who identifies as homosexual or LGBTQ. So I'm just focusing on energies, masculine and feminine energies. And we all have both of these. The same way we all have testosterone and estrogen, the same way we all have a left and a right brain. And some people are imbalanced in one way or another. But we ultimately have both. And we are comprised of these two energies in order to create a larger whole. So, okay, let's start. And side note, in terms of astrology or in terms of just the elements and the energy with each element, air and earth energy tend to be logical and more masculine, and water and fire tend to be the more emotional or feminine energies. So, okay, let's talk about the left brain and right brain, because any discussion of the divine masculine and feminine would be incomplete without this discussion. So let's talk about what the left brain is all about. And you'll find these characteristics in people who are largely imbalanced in the left brain. And each hemisphere has its positives and its negatives. So it's higher vibration or higher form, and then their lower or shadow side. So, okay, the left brain has to do with linear thinking. It has to do with logic, point A to point B, and then the steps in between. It has to do with control and determining the reality, asserting oneself, of defining and constraining, and the use of free will. Ultimately, it has to do with the finite, like math, science, engineering, trying to categorize and separate in order to understand the pieces, understand the trees within the larger forest. That's what the left brain is all about. And oftentimes this comes at the expense of intuition and psychic ability, or that which cannot be perceived with the five senses. Yeah. So let's talk about the right brain. The right brain has to do with everything that's the opposite. It's curviness. It's everything organic. It's what can't be put into boxes. It's the complex whole. It's the larger forest beyond the trees. It's a sense of irrationality, or of seeing how different pieces connect without really understanding why. It's the broader senses that can't be explained in words sometimes. It's the infinite, it's the unknown, it's the mystery. And this can come at the expense of logic and reason, but this has to do with letting go, and also of receiving, of saying, okay, let go and let God, saying that there is a divine plan, there is something larger than us, and we have no control. In an extremely imbalanced individual, you'll see religious extremism, or this belief that, we're just specks and our actions mean nothing, because ultimately God has the final say and we have no choice. So that is that's the right brain. So music, art, poetic literature, etc. And so we live in a largely left brain dominant society, and I have an affinity towards left brain thinking, and my Mercury is in an air sign, so I grew up enjoying math. I still do. I have a minor in math, And so to me, I enjoyed the details, the picking at things and trying to understand and define the things around me. And while I see the beauty in that, for me, I'm starting to see the necessity, the fact that we need to integrate these two halves. And I'm in that process, and I hope others can be in that process as well. So let's talk about the suppression of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So, and why that's happening. So with the suppression of both, we'll see inauthentic people. We'll see, in terms of men, we'll see, and again, I'm talking about energies. We'll see, for instance, men who, wear nice suits, who have high-paying jobs, who, look really nice and clean, and at the same time, they can't protect their families. They don't respect their wives. They don't respect their mothers. They don't treat people with honor. And then we see also men who are go to the gym 3 hours a day, who take steroids, or who want to be super manly macho, and again can't tap into their emotions. They can't protect the feminine. They can't respect their mothers and protect their families. So that's the shadow side of these energies, of not being able to integrate the feminine within themselves. And then we also see in the feminine, the divine feminine, the suppressed feminine, we see inauthenticity. We see women who, on the one hand, can become aggressive and bossy and nasty and controlling and domineering. And all of this arises from, that suppression of their own femininity, of their tenderness, of lowered self-esteem through the media, through movies, etc. And who seek to rise and combat that suppression in using the shadow side of the masculine. And another form of this inauthenticity is women who say, okay, fine, like, I'm a queen and I deserve everything and you have to give it to me, and I'm just gonna buy a whole bunch of expensive things and spend my whole time putting on makeup and buying expensive clothes to fill a void that can't be filled with material goods. So, and that's like the extreme passivity, the extreme, that's the shadow side of the feminine. And that's where one can't assert oneself and say, hey, I'm establishing boundaries. So that's the suppression. And let's see, what else do I have? So let's talk about what the authentic man and woman look like. So essentially it's that integration of both hemispheres, of both energies, of both within themselves and with their partner, with their divine counterpart. This is about being true to oneself. It's about truly feeling the feelings that bubble up, the emotions and the intuition, to express oneself firmly and defend oneself and your family, but to also allow room for the unknown, to allow for the divine plan, to let go sometimes, to assert boundaries, to assert one's place in this world, but also valuing the infinite beauty that exists without our input. And ultimately, if we can align our logic and our minds with our intuition and our hearts, we can give birth to authentic action in the external world. So that internal alignment leads to that beautiful action, which offers that integration both within and without. So yeah, and it's that integration, it's that union that is suppressed, because that is what is the most powerful. I was once in a cab with a well-known organizer and friend, and we were talking about power. And in many organizing spaces, power is defined as the ability to affect change. And I brought this up, and he said, no, actually, power is the ability to affect change and unite people. Because power, that's why people think that violence is powerful, but it's not, because violence destructs, it destroys, it breaks things down, it doesn't unite people. Violence can break down power, but ultimately it's not powerful, because power unites. And we can think of this in terms of physics. I'll give you the example of nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. So in nuclear fission, you break down a nucleus and you release energy. And the opposite of that is nuclear fusion, where you unite nuclei. And I don't think scientists have been able to conduct that experiment yet, or maybe there are a lot of tests and semi-successful experiments, but fusion is extremely difficult to create. It's extremely difficult to make that process happen. The sun runs on fusion, like that's how powerful it is. But fusion releases way more energy than fission, way more energy, but it's harder to do. Yeah. So similarly with humans, it's so easy to break people down, to make them feel like they're not worthy, like they're not enough, to break down relationships, to make people feel insecure and worthless. But if we can do the work to unite within ourselves and with others, like that beautiful union, that sacred union, is what brings us back to source. It brings us back to God. It brings us to this place of unity where we can create, where we can give birth to life. That is ultimately Christ consciousness. That's unity and Trinity consciousness. Like that is what it's all about. It's uniting the masculine and the feminine to give birth in this union, to go into the nothingness, to the void, into the infinite, and also create and bring forth new life. And that is also the difference between fear and love. Fear breaks people down. Fear limits. Fear constrains. Fear is all about lowering vibration and pulling apart and separating. But love is that powerful force that unites and brings everything together into nothing and everything, into the infinite and into godliness. And as a side note, people who are LGBTQ are here on this earth in our transition to learn these lessons and help others to learn them also. They're steps ahead of many heterosexual humans in terms of the confusion and the beauty of uniting those energies within and with others. So it's really beautiful. And yeah, that's all what I'll say about that. But yeah, ultimately, when one can reach that state of internal self-love and love with others, and especially with their divine counterpart, that is the ultimate finale. That is love. That is all that there is. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching, and many blessings.